If you love the Aether corruption in Grim Dawn and think regular melee builds are just too boring, then I have got the perfect build for you. Today, I'm hyped to share my updated Deathknight build, a brutal combo of the Soldier's raw power and the Necromancer's undead vibes, complemented and supported by the awesome Krieg set. With this setup, you can easily breeze through Shattered Realm 34 content without relying on consumables. And the best part, it's way easier to gear up than most endgame builds. So let's dive into it. We start with the Soldier Mastery, focusing on cadence as our main attack. While leveling and before obtaining the key items, you can play it as a simple physical cadence soldier, making it both easy to gear and straightforward to play. What is really cool about cadence is that it counts as a default weapon attack, which means it can activate skills like Markovian Advantage and Solhan's Technique, so throw 1 point in each of those early on for free bonus attacks. And don't forget Menhir's Will. A single point here gives you a life-saving heal whenever you get low. While you are leveling, keep the Necromancer side simple. At first, only put 15 points in here. Then grab Spectral Binding to boost your offensive stat and health, and its modifier to shred the enemy's resistances. Then put a few points in Reaping Strike. This will help to keep your health and energy topped up, and also take Necrotic Edge to add another damage boost on top of the ability to confuse the target. Okay, back to the soldier tree. Blitz is your go-to movement skill, which later gets upgraded to deal Aether damage. Yes, you will literally charge through enemies like a glowing freight train. Warcry is also a must-have for debuffing enemies' health and damage, and it gets even stronger once your Krieg set kicks in. Plus its disruptive ability can really come in handy. Fighting Spirit boosts our offensive stat, which in return gives us hit and crit chance. Both are vital to trigger a lot of our effects, like for example the Aether Smash skill on our rings. Military Conditioning gives us a thick health boost, but I would say depending on how tanky you are, you could remove a few points from here and put it into something else. And then we have Decorated Soldier, which gives us a much needed elemental and slow resistance. Also don't forget Scars of Battle for reduced stun and freeze duration and a decent amount of armor absorption. Field Command gives us a fat stat boost to our most vital attributes, and later we even get some bonus Aether damage, thanks to our set bonus. We also want to put a good amount of points into Squad Tactics for faster attacks with our cadence, which means we can proc much more on-hit effects. Fighting Form is not that important, since we are not a bleed build. I just put 1 point into here. And then I maxed out the Deadly Momentum to increase our physical damage, which later gets converted to Aether. Lastly, we have 1 point in Counter Strike, which are pretty much only used to trigger the Celestial power. Before you have your weapon that has physical to Aether conversion, you can max out the skill tree and play with Oleron's Rage for the physical damage increase. And once you have either the weapon, the set pieces, or this amulet, you can switch the Oleron's Rage to the Harbinger of Souls. Oh, and Ravenous Earth, it's optional but awesome. This skill lowers the enemy's health, deals Aether AoE damage, and with the right amulet, it becomes an awesome looking Aether volcano. But if you're not into it, then just use another amulet and respec those points into something else, like putting more points into trigger skills or buffs. Lastly, we got Ill Omen and Mark of Torment, both of which are meant for boss encounters to reduce the damage you take. So until you hit the end game, you don't have to put too much points into them. Okay, let's talk devotions now. The Bat gives us more lifesteal and deals consistent damage when we bind it to cadence. Yes, it does deal vitality damage, but we're gonna convert a bunch of it to Aether. Cool is a great little panic button. If shit goes down, you get increased healing and attack speed, so your leeching effects are even stronger. Plus you get some much needed physical resist, on top of it granting you also life leech itself. Behemoth adds even more healing and health, while Imp offers more Aether damage and a chance to confuse enemies. We get Tortoise for extra armor and an Absorb shield, and then we grab some blue devotions So we can unlock higher tier devotions like the Widow that shreds enemies' ether resistance and boosts our damage, and Kraken. This is also a no-brainer since we are using two-handed weapons. And lastly we have the Spear of the Heavens, which strikes the enemies with ether damage, and the lightning damage gets partly converted with our rings. Plus it can even stun them. And on top of that we get a bunch of offensive ability on the way. Now let's go over the gear. What's great is that a bunch of the key pieces are target farmable. So this setup is really not that hard to replicate. For example, the Krieg set, that is the backbone of this build, is target farmable from a specific boss in the Melmouth DLC. If any item piece comes from a specific NPC or boss, you can see it in the Grim Tools link. And when you click on it, you can find the information and the location of them. We pair the set with the Blade Arm, which is a guaranteed drop from a late game boss in the base campaign. It converts a big part of our physical damage to ether. What I really love, and I think is so fitting for this set, is the airstrike ability. Just imagine you are an ether soldier calling in artillery support. It's really cool. The legs and belt I chose are also target farmable, and they're loaded with bonuses like life leech, offensive and defensive ability, and even more ether conversion. For the amulet we have two different choices, both of which come from blueprints, which are also target farmable. They are the icing on top and just really round out the build. For rings, the Mage Lord Signet and Band are perfect. They boost exactly the playstyle we are going for, plus they help with elemental conversion. Also, once you have them, you can consider putting a few points into this skill at Cadence to boost your damage further. With this medal we crank up the cadence and ether damage even more. And lastly we take the Impurity Relic, which gives us a juicy +1 to all Necromancer skills, on top of a ton of ether benefits. You can check the Grim Tools link in the description if you want to see all the different components and augments I use. If you want to try out some alternative weapons, then you can try those three. For attributes, we split the points about evenly between physique and cunning. We need enough physique to wear the heavy Krieg set, and we need cunning to boost our hit and crit chance. So let's check out his gameplay. Do you see that? Enemies don't stand a chance. You are tanky enough to shrug off hits, your ether damage melts everything around you, and the whole thing looks ridiculously cool. Plus, with all that lifesteal and healing, you barely need to glance at your health bar as long as you keep hitting enemies. If you are ready to crush Grim Dawn with style, then give this build a shot. And don't forget to smash the like button if this guide helped you out. Let me also know in the comments what build you want to see next, and subscribe so you don't miss out.